Hello, welcome to Friday's edition of Cracking the Cryptic, and on screen we have a puzzle by the Miracle Sudoku man, Mitchell Lee. The Miracle Sudoku, of course, was one of our most popular videos because the puzzle in it was just so extraordinary. And we should have actually covered this puzzle by Mitchell a while ago. I remember it popping up on Logic Masters Germany, where it has a hugely high rating, and thinking, oh, we must cover that. And in fact, I think I got a couple of emails saying you must cover this puzzle as well. And for some reason we didn't. And I was only reminded of it by Mitchell's email to me about a week ago, where he said we might like to consider this for the channel. And indeed we do. Our testers say that this is a brilliant but difficult Little Killer Sudoku. So we're going to have a look at this and see how we get on. I'll remind you of the rules of Little Killer in a moment. There are two things I want to mention first. The first is that it's the first day of the German and Dutch round of the World Sudoku Grand Prix today. So going on, I think today, tomorrow and Sunday, we've got that round of the Grand Prix, which has been constructed by four of the best constructors in the world. So you've got Christoph Seeliger, Richard Stolk, Arvid Baars and Jonas Gleim setting the puzzles. So if you're into competitive Sudoku solving at all, you will want to have a go at that. I'll put a link under the video. Now the other thing I want to mention is about our Sudoku puzzle hunt, which is ready to go. We are planning to release it tomorrow at 3 o'clock UK time. So set your watches. If you are one of the people who want to be the first to solve it, you'll want to know that the launch time that's what we're aiming for. So that's 4 o'clock, I guess, European time. 10 o'clock is that Eastern Standard Time, and different times for other places in the world. So yeah, that's when we plan to release it. And if you're a patron of the channel, you'll be able to access all of the puzzles at that point. If you're not a patron of the channel, you will be able to read the preamble to the puzzle hunt, which includes two rather interesting letters and one set of notes which have been written by somebody who sounds extremely unpleasant. And you'll also be able to try the first puzzle. So yeah, and as I say, if you want to try the whole thing, that's for patrons only. If you'd like to become a patron, we would welcome you with open arms, and you can do that by clicking a link under the puzzle that I'll also put there. So do consider that. We are very, very proud of this puzzle hunt, or Sudoku hunt, whatever we want to call it. We're proud of it, and we really hope you'll enjoy it. For the person or people who do come first and send us the first correct solution, we will be awarding a small prize, which will be a piece of new merchandise we will create, which will have "Let's Get Cracking" written on a t-shirt or a sweatshirt, something like that. So we are "Let's Get Cracking" on a shirt is the thing we get asked about most, and we haven't done that yet, but we will create it for the winners of the hunt, and you'll get the first ever version. So that's talking about the Sudoku puzzle hunt. Let's talk about Mitchell Lee's puzzle and the rules. So the way this works is very simple. You pick an arrow, you look at the number, and you know that you move along the arrow. These four squares here have to add up to 27. You can repeat digits along this diagonal. You can't repeat digits in the same box though, so these two squares couldn't be the same number, because obviously that would breach the rules of Sudoku. But it's absolutely possible for this square, and this square, for example. They could all be 8, couldn't they? And then that would be a 3. So this would be a perfectly legitimate way of adding up to 27, and according with the Little Killer Sudoku rules. So do have a go at the puzzle first. You click on the link under the video to play along, and with that, let's get cracking. And I'll look at the 49 clue first, because that's by far the biggest. 2, 3, 4. So we've got 8 cells that need to add up to 49, so that's completely useless. Why do I say that? Well, all I'm doing is basically forming an approximate average for each one of these yellow squares. So I know that 6 8s are 48. That's very nearly equal to 49. So these cells have to roughly average 6, which is not an interesting number. I'd much rather they were a little bit larger or a lot smaller than that. 30 in 4 cells, so that's got to be Well, if these were all in the same row, it would have to be 6, 7, 8, and 9, but they are not all in the same row. So, in fact, these could be 3 9s, couldn't they? We could have these 3 squares adding up to 9 each. That would be 27. This would be a 3. So all we actually know is that there is no 1 and 2 in any of those squares, which is not the greatest restriction ever. Okay, so 17, is that the smallest clue? Yeah, let's look at that one. So we've got 17 here in 6 cells, so that's averaging just under 3. That's a little bit better, but not much. Okay. So what do we do next? Well, what I'm tempted to do, the harder versions of Little Killer that you see, they tend to combine the geometry of the arrows somehow. So we've got to somehow find a pattern in these arrows that is helpful. So you can see, you can see if we continue, the 17 arrow is basically pointing to the bottom of the 30 arrow. So we're going to get a rectangle if we follow these arrows around the grid. Let's colour them in. So these... I'm just noticing as well, look, we've got another rectangle formed by the other arrows. Oh, I've just lost all my army. Sorry. Let's do that again. Misclicks, the bane of StarCraft players. Now, let's have a look. So what I'm trying to do is to spot something about these overlapping rectangles that is useful. I can see that we create some 2 by 2 areas that the rectangles sort of overlap. Doesn't seem to be obvious though. What are we meant to do then? So, okay, so I can see that the set 17 is a small clue and the 30 is a big clue, and they overlap in this square. So the minimum value of this square is, if I make this 998, that adds up to 26. So the minimum value of this square is 4. So if this was 4, we'd have these 5 squares needing to add to 13. There's still quite a lot of license there though, because I could make these squares 1, 2 and 3. That would be 6. These two could be 1 and 2, so altogether that makes 9. So all we actually know is that this square can't equal a 9. That would break the total. So if this can't be a 9, let's make this an 8. If this is an 8 plus 8 and 9, so that would be 25. The minimum value of this square is 5. And this is on an 18 diagonal. So these squares have a maximum value of 13. Again, it's not brilliant, is it? But again, there's something going on here, because so if this is 5, I've got to keep this to 13 or less, because this is a minimum of a 5. But I mustn't make this too small, presumably, in doing that, because the 27 clue will then break. I mean, I can't make this a 1, can I? Oh, maybe I can. I can make it a 1. Although that would break this. This is like iterative. Every time you think I've got a grip on it. I haven't. So if this is a 1, you'd have 9, 8, 9, but I don't think this can be a 9 because this has a minimum value of, was it 4 or 5? I can't remember now. I think it was, I can't remember. But that can't be a 9, because if that's a 9 and that's a 4, that's 13. I can't make those squares add up to 4. So there is something going on in this rectangle. Let's use one of the long sides. Let's see if we can get a restriction. So if we go down, if we make these squares as small as we can make these squares 1, this could be a 1 and a 2, this could be a 1 and a 2. So that would give us 6 in these squares. So that means these two squares have to add up to 11 in that instance. They have to add up to 11 or less. That is absolutely forced. $11 or less. And we know this one can't be a 9. So that one must be as a max. Wow. 11 or less. So this one must be, because this is 18, this must be 12 or less. So these 4 squares together add up to 23 or less. Ah, no, okay. Okay, so we can compare this, can't we? Because what I've done here is I've worked out that these are 23 or less, but only using the long sides of the rectangles. I've not used the 27 or the 30 clue now. So I can get... Oh, this would be extremely clever if this is... Hang on a minute. 10... Oh, this is beautiful. This is absolutely beautiful. It's so hard to see, though. This is why I was going round iterating and sort of noticing that things kept clogging up or having an effect on the next corner of the rectangle. It's because there is a restriction on these 4 squares. We know these 4 squares are 23 or less looking at the long ends of the rectangle. If I look at the short ends of the rectangle, look, these... If I make those as big as I possibly can, so let's make these 2 squares 8 and 9, that adds up to 17. So looking at the short ends, these two have to be at least equal to 10. Looking at this side, we've got 30 here. If I make those equal 8 and 9, these two have to be at least equal to 13. And 13 and 10 is 23. So looking at the short sides of the rectangle, you have to make sure that the sort of orange squares add up to at least 23. If you look at the long sides of the rectangle, they have a maximum value of 23. So they have to equal 23. So these squares add up to 23. But more important than that, look. The way that we arrived at that restriction is that we put maximum values into those squares and minimum values into all these squares. So suddenly we have, after 14 minutes, I've entered in no ditch hits at all, obviously, but I have got some options in squares now. Oh, and now look, this 20 clue has suddenly become interesting because these 1s and 2s mean that the minimum I could make those squares would be 3 and 4. The minimum of those squares would be 3 and 4. That's 14. So these 3 squares have got to add up to 6 or less, which is it's absolutely hopeless. No, it's not hopeless. The 21 clue. This square... Yeah, this is perfect actually. This square has a minimum value of 4 because I could make those a maximum of 17 with 8 and 9. And if I make that 4, these 2 squares we know have to therefore equal 1, because I need these to be these highlighted squares to be 6 or less. So once this is a 4, the only way of making this 6 or less is with 1s in these 2 squares. Oh, the 1 now fixes some, we get some digits. 1, 2, 1, 2, 2, 1, 2 by Sudoku. So we've actually, well, we're flying now, we've nearly finished. Not really. Now let's, so those do have to be 8 and 9 therefore. Oh, and more importantly, if we look along this diagonal, I've got to keep all those to the minimum, so they've all got to be 3 and 4s. The 18, which I've not looked at, but once this is a 1, those two have got to add up to 17. They've got to be 8 and 9. So now this diagonal, look, the minimum I can put into those squares would be 3, 4, 3, 4, because there's already 1, 2s in the box. So that's 2 lots of 7 is 14, plus 2 is 16. So I need these to add up to 17. But actually I've got to be a bit careful there, because these are not in the same row of the grid. So it would be possible for them to repeat a digit. These could both be 8 or both be 9. So if this is 3, 5, 3, 5, 10, 17. So we can't have 2 9s because that breaks the possibilities for those 4 squares, but we can have 2 8s. If one of these sort of blue regions here added up to 3 and 5 rather than 3 and 4, then we could have 8s in both of these 2 squares. I'm not quite sure how we disambiguate that, so let's... One of the good things about little killers, especially when there's such a dearth of information, is that you've either got to look at the little killer clues themselves or you've got to do Sudoku. They are the only 2 options. And one of the interesting things here is we've sort of done. You can see this 4 is not seeing anything else. So I don't think we can do Sudoku. We can. There's a 1 in one of those squares. So we've got to look at the little killer clues. That 49. No, that is... There's so much license along there. So it must... These are adding up to... Oh, no, it's here. This is where I was meant to look. Look, 27 clue here. So these add up to 17, these have to add up to 10, but I've got little 2x2s containing 1s, 2s, 3s and 4s in these boxes. So the minimum I can make both those squares is 5, therefore they both have to be 5. And now I'm going to get these diagonals, aren't I? Because so that's got to be a 7 to make this 18. This one's got to be a 6 presumably to make that one equal 17. Five must live in one of those 2 cells. The problem is the 7 and the 6, they are the only 7 and 6s in the grid. The 5s, we've only got 2 5s and we've looked at where they interact. So I still don't think that's... I mean, it's important that we found it, but it's not really taken the solve forward. So this diagonal, if this is 3, how do we tell whether this is 3 4 or 3 5? No, I do see, look, these are all connected, these 2 are connected, they're connected through that arrangement of 8s and 9s in the grid. So if we, let's colour this actually, we'll make that one grey. So if this, whatever this is, what will its counterpart be in these two squares? So obviously this, if this is 9, this will not be 9, therefore this will be 9, so that's grey. This will not be grey, therefore this is grey. Therefore this is not grey. Oh, that's it, we've done it. So now we know whatever this is not the same number as this one. So these are not the same digit. If they are not the same digit and the options are 8 and 9, they add up to 17. If they add up to 17, I know these 4 squares have got to add up to 13, because obviously they've got the 2 there as well. So they have to be 3 and 4. Ah, and now this 4 is useful all of a sudden, because it sees a 3-4 pair here. So this now is a 4, that's a 3. That's a 3, that's a 4. Ah, where does 4 go? In the middle box now. These 4s, it's in one of those 2 cells, but look, we've got a 3-4 pair in column 5 already, so the 4 goes there, which then impacts on this 3-4 pair, which impacts on this 3-4 pair. It's just stunning as usual. That must be a 3 by Sudoku, I think. Ah, 4s. There must be a 4 here, and here, and here. We've done... I think I've done the 4s. 3s, therefore. Can we do the 3s? 3s are locked into one of two places down there. No, it's a bit surprising actually, but the 3s are not as profitable. 5s? No. Right, well, let's... What am I meant to do now? Oh, I know what I can do. I can do Sudoku with 8s and 9s. Look, 8s and 9s here and here, so this has to be an 8-9 pair. That must be a 6-7 pair to complete the box. So these 2 squares must be 8 and 9. 8s and 9s, look, 8s and 9s in row 2 and row 3. So we've not yet put any 8s and 9s into row 1 of the grid. They must live in those 2 squares. That gives us another 6-7 pair. Those 2 must be 8 and 9 again to complete the column. 8 9s here and here. Ah, and where does the 8-9 go in this box? It can't go here and it can't go there, so it must go there. You keep getting, yeah, 8s and 9s you can place, well, you can place them approximately, so they must be 5 and 7 in this box. They must be 5 and 6 in this box. 5, 6, 7 in this box, that's not 6. And I'm stuck now. So we've found the 8-9 pairs throughout the grid. I've not used the 49 clue yet. This must be about to come into its own. So that's interesting, isn't it? Look, I know what we should do. We should carry on with our this chain of 8s, 9s, because what we're going to be able to work out is what the parity of these 8 9s is on this diagonal, and that might help us. So whatever this is, this isn't, so this is, so this becomes grey. That's, what should I use for not grey? We'll say they're either grey or red, I think. That's going to be easier. So that's going to be red then. So if this is grey, this is red. This should be grey. This should be red. I need to get somehow... that one. That must be red then. So this is grey. This one must be red. This one is grey. This one is grey, and this one is red. Yeah, this is perfect. Now look, on this diagonal, I've now managed to locate or get the parity of these 8s and 9s, and they are all the same. So they're either all 9s or they're all 8s. So if they're all 9s, 4 9s is 36, we'd have to make 13 with those 4 squares. That would force 2 1s into these we can't have a 1 here because of the 1 above it. So we can't put 1s in the edge, so these can't all be 9s. These are all 8s. Oh, that is beautiful. Now that must be 9 then. I think we're going to be able to... We're going to make a lot of headway with 8s and 9s now all of a sudden. Yeah, that's a 9, that's an 8, that must be a 9. This is a 9, this is a 9, this is an 8. That must be a 9, and I think I've done all the 9s and I must be able to do all the 8s therefore. Yes, so we've done all the 8s, we've done all the 9s, and we've still not really used this clue up because we've now got 32 in the grey cells and we need 17 more. So what are the options for this square? This can be 3, 6, 7. This one can't be 1, can be 2, can be 3, can't be 4, can be 5. This one's no good at all. So now we've got 32, we need 17 in those squares. Oh, so this can't be anything other than 3. If this is 6, we get 12, 17 before we even get to that square. This is definitely a 3. Therefore, that's a 3. 3 lives in one of these 2 squares down here. So now let's have another look at this. So I've now got 3 of my 17. So these yellow squares have to add to 14 or less. So this can never be a 7. That doesn't work. 7 plus 6 would mean we'd need a 1 here. Ha! There was already a 7 there that could have told me that. So this one can't be a 5 or a 7. That will break it. 5 plus 5 plus 6 is definitely more than 14. But I'm not sure how we disambiguate this lot now. So I think our only option is to do Sudoku now. Let's look at this column. We've got loads in this column. We need 2, 6 and 7. That can't be a 6. This row we need 5, 6 and 7. 5, 6. 5, 6 pair in this column now. So now we need 1, 2 and 3. That's got to be, look, there's a 2, 3 here. This is a naked single. This has to be a 1. Therefore, this is a 1. This is a 1. This must be a 2, 3 pair to complete this column. 2, 3 pair in this box now. So that's a 7 over on this side. This must be a 5. That's a 7. Oh, the 5 fixes a 6. Oh, this is nice now. We're right into the middle of the puzzle. 5, 6. That must be a 5, therefore. That fixes the 6 over on this side. That fixes a 2. That must be a 5. So that should be a 7. And this should be a 6. And all of a sudden, yes, we are getting somewhere for sure here. This is a 6 now. So these 2 squares, look, have got to be 5 and 6. Let's see whether we can resolve that yet. 2, 3... 2, 3, 7 along here. So this is a 2 or a 7. That's a 2, 3 or 7. Okay, that one's a 2 or a 7. 5 must be fixed, and it is. So this is a 2 or a 7 as well, presumably. Oh, but we've not used the last part of the 49. So this is going to tell us how to disambiguate the rest of the grid, isn't it? So we've got, we've got our 32 plus 15. So we need 2 more to get 49. That's that square. So this is not a 3, this is a 2. Now hopefully that, yes it is, that's getting us right into this side of the grid as well. So the 3 here, that's got to be a 7. The 7 fixes the 6, that fixes the 6 and the 5. And that is how to solve Mitchell's latest miracle Sudoku. Absolutely brilliant as always, and a real head scratcher. I was very slow at the start of that. I couldn't figure out how to get this rectangle sorted. So let me know if you found a cleaner way of doing that. But beautiful logic as always. And yeah, we'll see you again later on for another edition of Cracking the Cryptic. And don't forget that Sudoku hunt tomorrow.